Okay, so waking up today, I am thinking about the quality of relationships I've had across time and realizing that most of them were, let's say, unhealthy at best, and in some cases, there was a fair amount of cruelty, manipulation, betrayal, right? And it's now as I form healthier relationships with myself and others that it's very clear to me in contrast that there's a big difference between having a healthy relationship with someone in which there are struggles and there are injuries and there's a certain share of pain that's going to come with that because we are human and we are complex and life is complex and things happen, and in that we're going to have some pain. There's no getting around it. If you love a person, if you're close to a person, if you have a bond and a connection that you value, if you're vulnerable and you're open and you give of your true self, it's almost impossible that you're not going to get a couple of bumps and bruises along the way. That being said, that being said, um, it's not the same as having to endure gratuitous pain frequently because others are not operating from a sound place and they're not engaging in mutually respectful and beneficial dynamics. And it's funny that when you're inside of a world where the dynamics are chronically dysfunctional, um, it becomes unclear. It does. It's like, well, people say you're going to get hurt along the way, so maybe this is just that. It's not. It's not. When 2, 3 times a week you've got your heart ripped out, your guts are churning, your head's spinning, you don't know what hit you, and the pain is frequent and I'd like to say regular, but it's not. It's irregular, it's unpredictable, but it's still frequent enough that it's almost impossible to find and maintain one's center, basically. And being in that way creates sort of a cloud around our perception, and it makes it so hard to see what is and isn't true within that. And stepping outside of it, it's like being knocked out in the surf when you're inside of it. Just can't quite figure out where you are, and everything's churning and crashing around you, and you just, I don't know, at the mercy of the waves at that point. And being outside of it, being on the shore, being able to get up and surf it, you can really see what the waves are. It's a very different experience of the same force. And I feel that where relationships are concerned, that I feel like I've been just stuck in the churn of the riptide for so long, and now that I'm outside of it, now that I'm sitting on the shore looking at it, what's going on with my lighting? Okay, we don't know. But being outside of that, it's very obvious to me that while it's true that we cannot truly love another and invest in the relationships we have with others without some amount of hurt. Hurt is not love, and love doesn't hurt all the all the time. Like all the time, not all the time, obviously, but at that kind of frequency, it should be by exception. And so I would say one measure of evaluating whether or not we're in healthy relationships is kind of taking an inventory of how often do we feel connected, received, embraced, supported, honored, loved, and how often are we struggling or suffering within that. And if you break down the ratios and it's anywhere near 50-50, it's already way out of whack. Really, it can't be like, well, half the time it's okay. It's not enough. It's not. That is not a passing score. Somewhere around 75 would be a passing score if you were both going through some difficult times. Then, yeah, okay, there might be more struggles. On a day-to-day, you should be rocking in the high 90%, but things are good. Pardon. And by rare exception, there are these difficult moments. And here's another thing. Within those difficult moments, you don't suddenly find yourselves on opposite sides of the line. You're still on the same team, and you're still working out the play to get the team forward. Once it becomes me versus you, you're not in the relationship anymore. You're in opposition. And if opposition is the name of the game, you can't have cooperation, you can't have connection, you can't have trust and love, and right? There may be a kind of love around that, but it's not true loving love, right? And maybe this is so super obvious, but I have a feeling I'm not the only person who's found themselves kind of flummoxed by this. And coming out with the scales falling from my eyes, I really feel it's worth mentioning that it is true. We're going to suffer in love. There's no way around it, but by exception, not by like standard operating procedure, right? That's not how it works. And if there's ever any question, looking at the ratios is really the best way to know whether you're throwing good effort after waste, or it's a sound investment of your time and emotion, right? So yeah, just a quick thought on that as I move forward and work through for myself what it is I need to do to have a healthy relationship with myself. And what's interesting is the more I develop that, the more I attract healthier and healthier interactions and healthier people and situations into my life, and the less I find myself in places where the darkness can creep in. And when I see it coming, I know to turn a little light on it. Say, oh, now, have I got this all down? Have I mastered anything? Nope. Work in progress, right? But as I go along, I feel like I want to leave these breadcrumbs on the trail to say this has been the way that got me this far. And for anybody who's still at the trailhead, I hope that's of some value and offers some guidance, some insight into evaluating what it is that helps us to determine where we belong and what we really need. And here's the other thing that complicates this. Before I wrap, we live in a world where it seems, maybe it's not a majority, but it's at least a substantial portion of people you meet are carrying a lot of wounds and some baggage, and things come out sideways in gnarly ways, and it doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't make that a bad situation. It makes it something that you have to evaluate in terms of what you are capable of doing in response. What can you bring to that? What can you bear? What can you sacrifice? What can you offer? And be objective about it. Say, if I can't do this without losing my own solid stance on things, if I start to slip, become dysregulated, and I don't know, I can't keep up with the things that I'm responsible for, the things that sustain me. If I can't do those things, then whatever I feel, it's almost moot, because ultimately what we need is to be able to stay in good relationship with ourselves and our lives and the other people within that, honor our responsibilities, pursue our passions, fulfill our purposes, do these things that are so fundamental to living a good life, and augment that by having this other relationship as a part of it. If having that relationship means we cannot do those things, if it costs that and it does not come with a substantial return on investment, and I don't mean to make it sound that way, but ultimately relationships are transactional. They are. It's that we just don't want them to be only transactional, right? We have to acknowledge as adults that when we give of ourselves, at some point we're going to be drained down to an empty bucket if we're doing that with someone who never fills us up again. Like, nobody ever pours back into that bucket. We're going to be scraping the bottom, and there'll be nothing left to give to that pursuit, and we'll have nothing left for all the other parts. So you can't be just throwing everything down a dry well and then hoping to draw a cool drink of water at the end. That's not how it works. So so there's that piece. But there's also the fact that most of us are flawed. Most of us are quirky. Most of us come with challenges, and our injuries show up in weird ways. So it's also important to comb out whether or not a person has malice or not is sort of the first step. But to say also, if this person does have issues that make things difficult for me in the relationship I have with them, is that something I can work with? Is that something I can do long term? Because it's not kind to another person to say, I can take that on and I'll be here for you, knowing on some level that we're going to get worn down and end up resentful and bitter and unkind and maybe acting out in bad ways ourselves, because that's where letting that build up comes out. So yeah, there's more gradations to it than we tend to ascribe. We tend to think it's binary. This is a good person and it's go, this is a bad person and no. That's, and on some level you do need to be able to do the first scan, but once you've begun to explore with the person and you've begun to develop some sort of rapport, I think it's valuable to go in and take a fine-tooth comb through it and say, what am I really dealing with, and can I continue to deal with that? Can I continue to invest in this, or is it just going to wear me down to a bloody nub of resentment and frustration? And say, yes, then I need to be respectful and lay this down and continue on without causing any further harm in, again, almost a gratuitous way, like, because it feels good now. No. Or can I actually come here and do the work to understand a person and meet them where they are, trusting that they will do the work to know who I am and meet me where I am, and in that we will create a common ground that is the relationship, that is the place where we meet and coexist and hopefully nourish one another in that experience. Because that's, when I say transactional, I think it's that we need to feed each other. And if you're giving all your food away and then you're sitting there starving and nobody's showing up for you, that's not going to have the outcome that a healthy human needs. And yeah, this is a little bit complex, but it's not as complicated as it seems. You can really look at ratios and see how much of the time is this to my benefit and how much does it cost me. The ratios are wrong. You just don't have it in the budget. Think of the budget of time, energy, attention, trust, all these things that we don't want to squander. Some of them we don't ever get back. We can rebuild trust, we can regain energy, but our time is gone. Our attention in that moment is spent and can't be reallocated, and it's very valuable, and it's reasonable that we would end up resentful, but we have to be responsible for that. We have to say, look, I don't want to come out to that place where I end up resenting a person. I need to be honest as I do this inventory and say, I can actually afford, it's in my budget to deal with that, and it is worth it to me to continue to feed and be fed by this. And I guess we also have to check in with our emotions. How do we feel when we're with and apart from others? And what does that say about the influence that bears on our lives and how that translates to the influence we bear on others and other situations in our lives? Because it's all interconnected. Relationships are the root of our social well-being, and we need social well-being to be well. And I guess we can choose to isolate, but that's 100% guarantee that we're alone. There will be the suffering of isolation and deprivation guaranteed. That's what's on the table if you choose that route. Whereas the pain may be more acute in opening ourselves to people, but it'll be towards something. It'll be with purpose, with meaning. It'll be your why that allows you to find your how in proceeding in that along that course and in that effort. And yeah, so these are some of the thoughts I have around how to evaluate where I put my own love and efforts, my time, my energy, and it's helpful. I'm still fine-tuning it, again, work in progress, but this is some of what is becoming ever more clear to me as I continue this work with myself and with others. And I'm grateful for having an opportunity at this point in my life to learn these things that would have been nice to have been given from the start, but here I am, and this is what I have, and I'm grateful to have it. It's better late than never, right? All right, well, it is getting late, and I need to get on with things, so that's my rambling monologue about how we can evaluate where we put our love and what we can expect, and how we make the good choices to come out to where we need to be, to have the good relationships that do allow us to be overexposed. Here we go. Issues with lighting. Not overexposed, just in the sunlight of warmth and happiness. How about that? Because over and underexposure aren't ideal. If you imagine us as plants, right? You put a plant in the scorching sun, it's going to get burned and die from overexposure. If you leave it in a shady place too long, it's going to starve from lack of sunlight. You want to find that one place where it's enough hours of daylight to produce the what do you call it? To induce photosynthesis. We need photosynthesis of the soul, and we need the light of love shining on us at the right level to achieve that. And so, all right, she's waxing metaphoric now. We're gonna wrap before I ramble anymore, but those are my thoughts on that subject for now, and I appreciate you coming along as I ramble through my little wake up tangents here. And I'm gonna go try to get both eyes open and sand free so I can start this day and continue learning as I go. All right. Thanks again. I look forward to seeing you in the next round. Take care. Bye-bye.